Move right to our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Hang on a second, I have a notification on my screen. All right, fantastic. I need a motion to approve our regular agenda. I assume you've all had a good chance to take a look at it.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Looks like Mr. Schaefer has a second on that one. Kim, we need you to turn on that video and your audio so that we can hear from you. Kim? She may be having some technical difficulties.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Thank you very much, Kim. And of course, the consent agenda, we've all had an opportunity to look through that with any questions on that. If none, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second.
Thanks, John.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Hi, thank you, Kim. Our city engineer, Brad Reefstick, is not with us tonight. Our city planner is up with a public hearing and the consideration of Resolution 2021-08, a minor subdivision. Jennifer?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So before you this evening, we have a pretty straightforward application for a minor subdivision for property located at 9694 75th Street North. For those of you that were with us and on the council a few years ago, we actually saw a minor subdivision request for this particular property when the previous owner, David Washburn, was before us. During that application process, you approved that minor subdivision, which created generally the same lot sizes as what are in front of you this evening. So it's approximately a 5-acre parcel and a 28.49 acre parcel. That's very similar to the minor subdivision that we saw in 2014, 2015. It was approved, it went through the whole process. At that time, then Mr. Washburn actually did not record the minor subdivision and sold the property. So as a result of that minor subdivision not being recorded before you this evening, once again, we have a minor subdivision request. It's very similar to the request that we had previously. For that reason, I did not prepare a lengthy presentation this evening. It's pretty straightforward. We've all seen this before. The differences between this application and the previous application in 2014 is that the configuration is slightly different. So the smaller lot size really now is more north-south, if you will, as opposed to being east-west in its orientation. That altered orientation actually does result in one accessory building remaining on the larger lot, the 28.5 acre lot approximately does have one accessory building on it as a result. So as you know, because we've been talking about this, accessory buildings are typically not permitted without a principal structure. The intent is that a new house and a new home will be constructed on that larger parcel, and it hasn't been completed yet. At that time, then obviously this accessory building would be in full compliance with the new home. And the owner today, Mr. Hawkins and Mrs. Hawkins, actually both are going to retain ownership of both parcels and both properties. So at this time, what staff is recommending is we simply say you can't sell the lots or the parcels independently of each other until such time a principal structure is constructed on that larger parcel. If they wish to do that, then they would need to take that accessory building down just because it would be out of compliance. But considering that there's a principal structure there today, they intend to maintain or own both parcels. Staff really doesn't see an issue with simply saying you can't sell them separately from each other at this time. So with that, that's pretty quick and dirty, straightforward summary of the application this evening. Both resulting lots, as are, with the exception of that accessory building, meet and comply with our ordinance standards for lot frontage, lot size, depth, all of those things. We did during 2014, if you guys recall, we did receive soil borings that actually demonstrated that the larger parcel can certainly support a new principal structure. So from that perspective, both parcels are conforming to our lot standards. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think this one's pretty straightforward.
Gentlemen, any questions for Jennifer on leaving that secondary structure, that pole building on that lot, and then forbidding sale until a secondary primary structure is built? Any questions on that? That seems to be the only complication here. No?
And for
Jennifer, thank you. And Jennifer, we would do that just through the, what's the mechanism? It's just written right into the what?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's actually provided as a condition within the resolution. The resolution gets recorded against the property. And so from that perspective, you know, anyone pulling title, for example, would see it. And it clearly states, unless there's a principal structure, you can't sell these separately. When that happens, clearly they become compliant. If it doesn't, they would have to tear it down. So, okay. But it's recorded against the property.
Okay, so just so the council knows, it's right in the recordable instrument that's recorded at the county. So whenever you sell a property, obviously you do a title search and that would pop up from the county records, which is what Jennifer is referring to. So any questions before we open the public hearing, gentlemen? I'd like to get those out of the way before we do that. Nothing, yeah. If Tom doesn't have anything, probably no one else is gonna have anything. Well, he's done a lot of these. Let's go ahead and if I can get a member to move to open the public hearing for the consideration of this application for a minor subdivision, please.
I'll move.
Thank you, Jeff. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ogg. The public hearing is now open on the application for the minor subdivision.
You have to take a roll call.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Sorry. I'm in a hurry again, aren't I? Trying to set records. Go ahead, Kim. Sorry about that.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Aye. And thank you again, Jeff. Opening up the public hearing for the application for the minor subdivision at 9694 75th Street North. Do we have any residents of Grant who would like to comment on this minor subdivision?
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we do have folks that are on the line. So I would ask them if anybody would like to provide testimony regarding this item. If you would raise your hand by clicking the button on the bottom of your screen. It simply says raise hand. I believe it's a blue icon that will notify us that you have something that you would like to provide for the public hearing. Mr. Mayor, at this time, nobody is raising their hand. So I would ask one more time, if anybody has something that they would like to share, if you could look at the bottom of your screen, there should be an icon that says raise hand. If you'd like to click that, then we know that you would like to provide some public testimony.
Nothing?
Again, nothing.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. As you had mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, the Washburns, I believe, had done something very, very similar. So probably any commentary on that situation had already been handled. The neighbors, once they look at this, it's like you say, it's pretty non-controversial. So I guess we're going to go ahead and close down the public hearing on this, and we'll need a first, a second, and a roll call to do so.
I'll move to shut it down.
Thank you, Jeff. Second for Mr. Giefer.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer. Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Aye, and thank you, Kim. Gentlemen, we have before us the consideration of resolution 2021-08. We've had the public hearing. Jennifer has explained it to us. Seems pretty trouble-free. Looks like we're looking for a motion and a second on this.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2021-08 Resolution approving a request for a minor subdivision at 9694 75th Street North.
And a second. Mr. Giefer. And roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Rock,
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer,
Jeff, you're muted.
Sorry, aye. That was an accent. Sorry. Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Aye. Thank you, Kim. Jen, we're going to stay with you for the consideration of the interim use permit. If you could explain the changes that have happened there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this evening, I've brought back to you a revised draft ordinance for interim uses in the city. As directed at our last discussion, all references to accessory dwelling units have been removed out of the proposed language. So that includes the definition, the removal of it from the table of uses, and then the other various locations where it had previously been proposed. So that has been removed from this particular draft. The rest of the information that we discussed at the last meeting remains intact with respect to defining interim uses, also having the process established for how we would go about issuing interim use permits. So it's as directed, the same language as was previously reviewed, but omitting all references to accessory dwelling units. So it's pretty straightforward. Once again, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. One item I will note is I do know that there was some conversation or some potential reflection regarding the principal building and accessory building order, if you will. And so if that is something that you would like to remove this evening, it's a simple strikeout that we can do, which would be on page, let's see here. Well, it's on page 30, let's see here, 35 of the PDF that was emailed out to you. But at the top, it says subsection D, building permit for principal building, a prerequisite. And so we could go back to revert to the original language that was in place at the time. So the underline would be removed and the strikeout would be added back in. So with that, depending on your desires, we can make that change. Kim and I discussed the fact that tonight we do not have a summary publication prepared for you this evening, but we certainly would want to do that. So we would have that summary publication resolution on your consent agenda next month so that we avoid having to publish all of the language that's here. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Certainly, and that summary publication, that would give us all a chance to just kind of look through it again and make sure it's as we wished it. And as Jennifer said, we wouldn't end up publishing the entire monstrosity, which would cost a lot of money. So it looks as though we have gone ahead and gotten rid of the buildings. Let's just say we got rid of the buildings, and the temporary uses are still there because they're a little bit easier. Any questions on this, gentlemen? Tom.
Well, I just want to be clear because there was a little confusion. I was for maybe allowing the accessory building to be put up before the building. They both had to have the permits pulled, blah, blah. And the timeline and the issue that I thought staff wanted us or was thinking it was a good idea for this. That was why it came forward to us. Obviously, we're not going to change the acreage size of lots and grand, of course, even if people want to, and they do all the time. But it would never come forward to us because staff would say that's not going to happen. So just so we're clear, I don't support, and I did last time, putting up an accessory building before the principal structure anymore. Because what I found out after the meeting, which was unfortunate, was that we don't really need this, and it's more problematic than anything. So I do not want that in this. And it looks like under structure temporary, it looks like that's included. Is that correct, Jennifer, or is that not correct?
No, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So what we would need to do is on that subsection D on page 35 of the PDF, we would revert to the original language in the ordinance. So right now, I don't
have that. Was that sent to me? Because I didn't print that off. I have this. Is this? Oops, it's upside down. That's not it.
No, that's right set up. If you go to the next page of that you just held up. there's subsection D, and it says building permit for principal structure or prerequisite.
I got nothing.
Okay, well,
Councilmember Carr, is it on the back page?
Yes, it is on the back page, Tom.
Yep.
Thought I knew it. Saw it here. Back page, right at the top, under draft for consideration.
So all that we would.
I got nothing on my back page. So.
Okay, yeah. So I'll read it. I'll read it to you.
Okay.
This is what it. So currently, the way it was drafted was building permit for principal building a prerequisite. No accessory building shall be constructed nor accessory use permitted on a lot without obtaining an interim use permit for such use. We would strike that and go back to the original language, which states no accessory building shall be constructed nor accessory use permitted on a lot until a building permit has been issued for the principal building to which it is accessory. So we will go back to the language that's in your current code.
So we would go back to that more restrictive language, Tom, that we've been operating under for quite some time.
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want to change.
Yeah, that's worked very well for us. And I think that really goes with the spirit of what we were trying to achieve here in terms of interim use permits and buildings. So kind of reverting back to that just gives us that little extra, you know, that we've always been operating under, and it's worked great, right? Yeah. So I think Jennifer's doing a great job just bringing it back to interim uses and striking this. Kim, I see your hand.
Councilmember Ricker, I just wanted to point out, Jennifer was saying page 35, and that was for the whole packet. It is the last of your draft ordinance.
Yeah, right on top with the signatures, bud. With the signature page, if you look all the way up on top, the last page has the signature lines on it. But it reverts it back to the old language, which is absolutely what we intended, and it's what I understood. And I think Jennifer.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm seeing it.
That's
less confusing. I got that page. Yep.
Yeah. So you know what? On that, gentlemen, I see no other hands in terms of questions. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve this interim use permits with the striking of the buildings as we have discussed and Jennifer has incorporated. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Giefer have a second on this.
I think Jeff wants a discussion.
Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff. I can't hear you, Jeff.
It wasn't a second. I have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer, under termination, in the draft, under number 1, it states the date stated in the permit. Would we need to also state in there or event or such as a sale of the property as stated in the permit? I know you've got that covered under the next, under standards, but under termination, I wonder if we should have that an event such as a sale of a property, that type of thing.
I see what you're saying. So if, for example, Jeff, they were having, and I always go back to this, they're having a haunted house or a haunted hayride or what have you. And that haunted hayride interim use permit has not ended yet, but the home or the property has been sold prior to the ending of that interim use permit. Or Jennifer, is this just covered under the fact that interim use permits never transfer to a new owner?
So Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so just like a conditional use permit, we have the ability to establish these things within the specific permit that comes before us. And so when you look at the termination, to me, when I hear the date stated in the permit, the date stated could be an event, which is a date that occurs. So it's a time-based event. And so while you might not say January 1st, 2025, upon the sale of the property to a new owner is also a date or a threshold or an event that comes up underneath that. So to me, that's covered under that condition number 1 or that, and you're going to establish that, or we're going to establish that as it goes through the hearing process. So just like the conditional use permit, remember, this will be in front of you, it will be in front of the planning commission. So this is saying any of these things can cause it. So it could be a date in the permit, which could be the date of the sale of the property to a new owner, or the date, you know what I mean? So to me, that fits into that. But if you'd like to clarify and say the date stated in the permit, comma, or event, you know, we could expound or expand upon that. That's not an issue, but to me that's covered because you are giving it a date or a time in which it expires. Then number two is if you violate something, then you could revoke it. You know what I mean? So it's like these 4 things, and to me, date covers a whole host of things.
Mm-hmm. And that, if I may just jump in real quick, Jeff, that and that's the beauty of, if you will, bringing it back from not the structures, but bringing it back to the uses themselves. Because keep in mind, this is going to go through the whole process with both the planning commission is going to go, oh, okay, so what is your use? How interim is it? What will you be doing? And then it comes forward to us for those types of questions, right? And again, it's a use. So we can always put conditions in there that it just doesn't go past this date of your use, right? Now, Jennifer, just I don't think I got a great answer to this, and I'm sure you know, whether or not an interim use permit is not a CUP. If, for example, we made a mistake and we forgot to put a date in there for the end of the use and the property gets sold, does an interim use permit under these conditions transfer to a new owner?
So there's nothing that requires you, there's nothing that says absolutely not, unless you say this is given to this specific property and this specific use for this duration of time. And so then you'd have to kind of look at these other 3 things, these other 3 criteria, and do one of those trip in.
Okay.
So the reality is anybody, whether it's myself or someone else issuing an interim use permit or drafting it, should have in it that well, here's the thing though, you may decide you don't care who the owner is and it doesn't terminate upon transfer to ownership, right? So it should always be a conversation in an interim use permit versus you can't really have that conversation in a conditional use permit.
Right, exactly. And frankly, the entire thing could be covered by a simple statement, whichever comes first, the end of your use or the transfer of the property, right? So just that simple statement. And I kind of like to leave options open here a little bit, Jeff, so that we can craft individual solutions for individual interim use permit seekers, right? Because I don't want to tie our hands. We really kind of need to put our noggins together when we get these across and go, how are we going to craft this to both serve their purposes, but to make sure that we don't have these things going on endlessly. They're not a CUP, right? As you pointed out. So we want to make sure that they just don't keep going and going and going. And that statement, whichever comes first, will almost always take care of those types of eventualities. Would you agree?
I would, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and Jeff, Mr. Schaefer?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to double check to make sure that that doesn't tie our hands anyway, the way it's written. So if you think it's okay, I'm okay with that.
I think it leaves us some options, Jeff. Instead of tying our hands, it actually leaves some options open. I think that's important for not only us, but future councils. Mr. Carr has hand up.
Well, just to be clear, because we got this stuff and it's a little confusing. So the draft for consideration table that I have in my packet is the one we're going to vote on. Jennifer? The one that has manufactured home care facility as interim use and manufactured home temporary dwelling as interim use.
Those are already in your use table, Tom.
Huh?
Those are already in your use table.
Yeah, but they're all scratched off from conditional use to interim use. So that's what I'm saying. So manufactured home as a temporary dwelling is still okay, and it was okay before.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Because it was in there. Okay.
Yeah. It's just we have if we assign it that way. I thought you were looking at it as a new use.
No.
I got you. I didn't understand. My apologies. This gives us a little more control, I think. Jennifer, would you also characterize it that way?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, yes. When you look at the language under 32-338C, which is the language about temporary dwellings associated with the manufactured homes, it was really, from what I can tell, the intent was, your parents want, you want to have your parents on the same property because you need to take care of them or whatever the special circumstance is as to why you're going to put this on your property. And so to me, the way it was drafted and sort of the intent was really that you didn't want this to be a permanent situation. And so from that perspective, to me, that fits really well with an interim use permit, because once again, if we go back to our termination standards, you could say upon such time, and I realize this is going to sound morbid, so I'm sorry, but until such time that whoever's residing passes away, that could be your timeline. So you have the ability to kind of, it doesn't mean that it's a 1-year interim use permit. It could be a 10-year interim use permit. So to me, that was the intent of the ordinance. If you believe otherwise, you can certainly let me know, but that is why staff recommended that for an interim use as opposed to the conditional use.
Tom.
And yeah, I understand that. We did have some discussion on, 2 homes on a property before, and I even talked about a manufactured home or something. So really it was always in our ordinance that somebody could have did that. Nobody came forward, and now we're going to take the opportunity to change into interim use, correct?
Well, they could always do a manufactured home, but that's very different than an accessory dwelling unit. So
no, I understand that.
Yes, but a manufactured home has been in the ordinance as long as I've been
exactly
here.
That's what I'm saying. So if somebody decides to come forward and put a manufactured home on a property, this is something that's been in the ordinance, was a conditional use permit. We basically couldn't say no. And now it's an interim use permit. So we can say yes, but it's a shorter period of time. Correct? Okay.
Correct.
I just want to clear that up because I know I talked about it at the last meeting.
No, that's great, Tom. Basically what it does is, in a roundabout way, we're talking about how to take things that are already there. Jennifer's not adding anything. She hasn't added anything in terms of structures, okay? What she's doing is she's looking at that use table and going, hey, wait a second, let's tighten this up a little bit so the council, using its discretion, can make sure that these things are done the correct way in the way that Grant wants them done. And I think that Jennifer, that's fantastic. You assigned it exactly where I thought it should be.
And since 1982, somebody could have done this. Nobody has.
Yes. We had hardly any control, Tom.
No.
Once it was granted, we had no control. At least now we're going to have some control. Like Jeff had said, how do we terminate this stuff?
Yep.
How does
I just want to be clear.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And Schaefer brought it up as well. I mean, how does this stuff end? How do we do that? John.
The question I have is, in the old table, I see the no's, and we've made those as interims. Why did we have them as no's to begin with, and how does interim help us?
So Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I assume Councilmember Ra is asking about structure temporary.
Well, you started at blacktop crushing equipment. You didn't have it for agricultural A2 or general business. And we had no's there. And now we have interim use. And then, going down, of course, to the obviously manufactured home, temporary dwelling, we had no for A2, and we've made it interim use. So why did we say no before? And now how does interim use help us when no doesn't even have a conditional use permit allowed?
So Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the only way I know how to answer this is to go one by one. So if you want to do that, we can do that. So blacktop or crushing equipment, we had it as A1 was a conditional use permit, A2 was not permitted, and general business was not permitted. Essentially at this time, there's not a whole lot of difference between A1 and A2 properties. And when you look at where they abut in terms of on, for example, Highway 36 or the county roads, we have a real mix, as opposed to when this table was created. There was a lot more consistency in how A1 and A2 were applied along those county roads. So from staff's perspective, there's really no difference between those two. Where do we get the most requests for those types of facilities? They're really along some of those major thoroughfares. And so it would make sense that they're on both A1 and A2. That was staff's perspective, that there's not really a huge difference between A1 and A2.
Well, I know, but there is a difference, as we have seen in the past with other things that have happened in Grant. A1 can do things, A2 cannot. So there is a difference, because we have approved things that are in A1 that we said are allowed, but A2 is abutted and A1 is allowed. So there is a difference.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe there's actually only 2 differences or 3 different. I mean, it's a really small handful of differences of what can be between the two. They've slowly over time evolved into basically the same zoning district for the most part. They really have. And so, and we could do that as a separate analysis at some point, but they really have evolved into, they have the same minimum lot size, they have the same density standards, they have the same setback requirements. The way we've tackled the use piece of it, as opposed to saying A1 versus A2 uses, what we've done instead is really gone the route of doing performance standards based on acreages and set. So for example, supper clubs is one that pops into my head, where we said, well, supper clubs, you need 20 acres of contiguous land. It has to abut, arterial XYZ. So we put like a dozen or so, or 10 to 12 conditions. And so as opposed to making it about the zoning district, it's about the performance standards of the lot itself and its ability to maintain that capacity. And so that's really how we've evolved over the last decade or so, at least in the ordinances we've done under, since I've been here, and that those differences between A1 and A2 have really become blurred in terms of their differences. So, but if you want to go through that analysis, then I would suggest that we.
I'm going to step in right here. This is not, John, hang on a second, John. This isn't the time for that analysis. That should have been done in the last week before the meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking why the no's became interim. That's all.
Okay.
That's my question.
Well, one of the things that we want to concentrate on here is not the difference between A1 and A2, but what you want to be doing is you want to look at the actual use itself. Does this use make sense in an A1 or I'll get to you in a second, Tom, A1 or A2, okay? Does it make sense there? And does it make sense to have that interim use there? Because is it fair then for someone who has elderly parents, for example, in a certain spot in the city to not be able to take advantage of that? I find it isn't, because I'm concentrating on the use, not the differences, but the use and where those folks may live, right? So that's how I'm kind of concentrating on it. But that type of analysis should have been done in the last week, and it should have been done through emails to the clerk and then through the planner. Tom?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, the A1's, a little history lesson short. Back in the day, we're on the outskirts and they were larger parcels, and A2 was more internal residential, and that was kind of our zoning. And so the A2s, they were a little more restrictive than the A1s. I've been I've been hoping for 10 years that we would take the last, as Jennifer said, I don't know what's there, 6, 7 uses. This seems like an opportune time to get rid of another one and get rid of it and get us back to the same. John's absolutely 100% right. So to John's point,
in a way,
he is to the letter. There is a difference between A1 and A2 in the past. It's pretty much gone. And if we get rid of these last couple, and this might be the opportune moment, then we will get to a point where we don't have different zoning. It's pretty much the same. We did that with supper, a couple other things we changed just to clean it up. So Jennifer's right. I don't know what we got. 3 left. I don't know. This can't be many. Yeah. So to me, John is absolutely right. But the point about what Jennifer did was because we've done it before with supper clubs and other things. So we're trying to clean up the ordinances, and I guess I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, John is right. On a general macro level, of course he is. I mean, there is no, obviously it says A1, it says A2 on the map. And are there some differences? You're darn right there is. But if we concentrate on the actual uses of that, and we burrow down to that, someone in A1, someone in A2, whether it's Tom or me or anyone else with elderly parents, being able to do that on an interim use is going to give us more control. It's going to kind of pull it in under, and we've had these discussions about pulling this stuff out into the light as well. And that is I think a component that we can all agree on, pulling it into the light a little bit. So, Tom, I don't disagree with your point there. And I also agree with you that John is right on that macro level, but we burrow down into this use. And I think we kind of need to concentrate on this. Now, having an assessment of the differences between A1 and A2, if you want to have that conversation offline with Kim and then through Jennifer, there's nothing wrong with that. But this consideration here, we've got a first and a second on the table for this use and these interim use this interim use permit. And that's what I kind of want to stick on instead of the overall, you know, A1, A2 discussion if we could. So do we have other questions that are burrowing in on this use? Not putting aside the A1 and A2 because again,
right,
John,
no,
you're right.
no, and I get it.
Right.
I get it. You know, and I'm just looking at the structure temporary, you know, or interim that was crossed out. It was no across the board, and now we have 3 interims. Just curious why we are doing that now.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the structure temporary, the strikeout in that use section says or interim use, see section 32-335.
Right.
The strikeout is because the language that was previously in the ordinance was conflicting with the new requirement. So that struck out, and we struck out 32335. It's repealed within this ordinance. Then that leaves structure temporary, and staff looked at what we've got going on in this particular interim use table, plus also considering that conditional uses could be interim uses depending on how folks applied for their permits. And a temporary structure has a very specific definition in our ordinance of what means structure and what means temporary. And so, for example, there may be a use that would come forward that we would say that would classify that we'd say we would allow that on an interim basis, that if it meets that definition of structure and temporary, and that would be covered under the interim use permit. So, for example, what kind of jumps into my mind, we've had a couple, for example, greenhouses or those types of temporary structures where folks have wanted to do it as part of like axe stalls or omets or whatever it is, and they've wanted to do them on a temporary basis. It would meet the use table in terms of agricultural production. The structure itself, we may permit on an interim basis. So it's a temporary, which is why it says temporary structure. It's not permanent. It's not an accessory building. It's not structure takes on, does it have a roof? Does it cover something?
But Jennifer, can I stop you for a second? Let's go back and let's just hit a little history, because I think maybe this is important. When Omets or someone else would want to do one of these temporary structures, what type of a permitting would we have had to do before this? How would we have permitted that?
Well, it may require a building permit.
Okay, what else?
Depending on what it is. I believe actually we've kind of tried to, for lack of a better way of saying it, sort of shoehorn it into a certificate of compliance so that we have some way of knowing it's out there.
We've also played with CUPs on these, Jennifer.
We have.
Okay, and that's why the interim use permit, gentlemen, I'm going to stop you there. That's why the interim use permit, and what Jennifer is involved in this kind of day-to-day and these slight machinations here. And we've been sort of trapped before, well, trap's a bad word, but kind of shoehorned, there's a better one, into CUPs where really none of us felt it was appropriate, but we had no other tool. We were just stuck. There was nothing else for us to allow these people to do these types of things, which the majority of the council was in agreement with, but we had no tools. So again, this is a tool that when it comes back before you, gentlemen, you're going to look at the use, you're going to look at the structure, you're going to look at all of it, and then you're going to start laying conditions just like any other CUP, except it's not going to run with the land. In the end, those conditions and that use will end. So that's why, if we look at this, so that's why I keep saying concentrate on the use, because you're going to have more control over this. And Jennifer and the other staff are not going to be shoehorned into recommending things that frankly just don't fit the use, like a CUP. So hopefully that gets us a little bit closer here. Gentlemen, we've had a very long discussion on this. We have a first and a second on the floor. So unless we have additional things that we'd like to add to this, I guess I'd be looking for a roll call if there are no additional questions. Very good. Let's take a roll call, Kim.
Councilmember Carr.
Kim, Tom, you're on mute.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Hey, Jennifer, I want to thank you for this work. It was complicated, and watching us go backward and forward on some of this stuff as our thoughts changed and our sort of, we went in a little bit different directions, but you were able to interpret that and put it down to paper the correct way. And now we'll have another tool that will allow us to allow those uses without making such a mess and costing our applicants so much money. It's just better for the city. So thank you, Jennifer.
Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, yes. Jennifer, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, just a reminder, we'll have this in its final form, plus the resolution of summary publication will be on your consent agenda in July.
Right. Let's all take the time to read that well before the meeting so that it is, you know, what we want it to be. Kim.
Mayor and council members, now that you have gotten through that, and we are all thrilled with that, we have 18 IUP applications in the queue.
Good.
What's the number one?
I'm teasing. We have none.
You liar.
I was like,
you're just cruel sometimes. 18?
Wow.
That's funny.
I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't help myself.
I'm moving on. I'm trying to set a record here. Nobody gets to talk anymore. Okay. We have the acceptance of our 2020 audit, and we have our wonderful treasurer here with us tonight, Ms. Sharon Schwartz. Sharon, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Every year we go through this where we have our financial statements from the previous year audited and by our auditors, Clifton Larson Allen. And I'm assuming, Kim, that they mailed an audit to everyone, or it got emailed?
Yeah, it was totally electronic. So it was all emailed to everyone.
All right, good. And I would say first off that last year was a very unusual year for the city with COVID and COVID funding and COVID reporting. And we have not done road projects and borrowing to this level for a really, really long time, maybe since the last time these two neighborhoods were originally paved. What do you think, Tom? Is that true?
I would say so. We did a lot of paving.
We did a lot of paving. And so our financial statements look a little different too, because we have debt service again and capital projects. The auditors said that we needed to have a separate capital projects fund according to our agreement with the bank. And so on page 16 of the report, where we have our combined financial statements, you will see that now that there are 5, we're trying to get rid of the Jasmine Avenue one, but apparently we still have $1,000 in there that we need to move. And so, but he also, the city has never liked to have a separate road projects fund or capital fund, and has generally used the general fund for everything since I can't remember when we had a capital fund, but the auditors way back then said we should not use one because we had difficulty with it and keeping it separate.
But this capital fund is for projects that have already taken place. We're not putting together a capital fund for future planned projects. This is for projects that have already occurred.
Right, but it has a net balance of $149,000. And so in the future, we will transfer that back to the general fund and close this, but we'll have to look at it during the budget process to see when that is appropriate.
Okay. And Sharon, those yes. remain as that 149,000 is dedicated. It's dedicated funds. It's not going anywhere. It's just a static account.
That's right. That is right.
Okay. All right.
And we could budget and spend it. We could move it. We can, you know, and I confirmed that with the auditor. So, but I mean, it's kind of just, in fact, kept with our other reserves in the bank. It's not in a separate drawer like some people thought at one time. It's all together, and it's an accounting procedure that it's separate.
Are you telling me we don't have $149,000 worth of gold bars stacked up in your basement? Is that what you're telling me?
That's right. But it might be under Kim's desk with that gravel she hid all those years ago under there.
Oh yeah, the gravel. I remember that. That's a funny one.
And Mayor and council members, I'll be using that gold under the desk to start paying the bonds back, which the city will have to start doing in this next year. So
right. So my point is, Sharon, that the $149,000 is a dedicated fund in order to guarantee our payments through the bond fund. Is that correct?
No. Okay. It's
what
a separate fund that shows our capital payments. The debt service fund is a dedicated fund that can only be used to pay current bonds. And until you have all your bonds paid off, current and future bonds, that money stays where it is.
Stays there. I had the two confused. Thank you for setting me straight there. I appreciate that. Let's keep going before we lose anybody and they fall asleep and fall off the camera there.
All right. And so if we go to page 40, which talks about our general fund, a budget and variances. You'll look at under revenues and see that our big variance is in coronavirus aid, which no one budgeted for. And we still have licenses and permits, which are our building permits, which came in still above budget. And we aren't surprised at that, but you know, nobody knew either what was going to happen with building and building permits. So we were more conservative, and it's better to have better revenue than projected rather than less.
That's going to go back out, but that's okay.
A lot of it goes back. Well, the coronavirus aid, then we had to spend.
Right.
Or send back.
I'm talking about the building permit.
Right. A lot of the building permit aid goes back to pay our building inspector and our state fees.
Yeah, pass through.
Right. We do have some small amount that we get paid for keeping our building permits on file and paying Kim to do that in office space, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see.
But no profit. We can't buy any more gold bars.
Right.
Okay. Just checking.
I think pretty much everything, let's see, is pretty close to where we thought. Under, on the next page, 41, under Public Works Streets, we underspent on gravel and road maintenance, but we were applying that to our capital roads projects. We told the residents, if you build, we will apply your maintenance dollars to our contribution to the capital road projects. And so those are under budget.
Hang on one second, Sharon. Kim, did you have something to add there?
Mayor and council members, Sharon just did. I heard the statement. We were lower under budget on road maintenance, and I didn't want it to there. I wanted an explanation
right.
Because of the dollars that were donated to the road projects.
Right. Well, not donated, expended.
Expended, yes.
Yes, they were not donated. Keep in mind for the residents watching this, these were funds that the city collected in order to do maintenance on these specific roads, which is why you received the letter prior to the project being done that the city would take those funds that have been set aside for maintenance and put those toward the capital road improvement project. That's how that works. So there was no shortage. It was actually applied back to your roads. Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, and then on the last line before total streets, other services and charges, we have a budget of $1,900 and expenditure of $37,000. And this was the petitions and the city meetings with several neighborhoods who have not decided to do their roads yet. And so, but that's like an investment by the city in that information, and those neighborhoods can still come forward, and that information will be good for, I don't remember how many years.
3 years. 3 years on that. Yep. Got 3 years to go ahead and reinitiate that. The engineering study lasts 3 years per Brad and in his firm. So how about any other highlights here, Sharon, in terms of governance or controls or anything else you want to hit?
And then I think that we should say that our fund balance is in very good shape.
Yeah.
In very good shape.
What are we looking at? Do you have a percentage for us on that, Sharon? Just, I hate to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I knew it. I put you on the spot, didn't I?
Here. You did.
Sorry about that. Well, let me reassure people while Sharon is doing. Go ahead, Sharon. Sorry. I'm going to reassure people why Sharon does that the city of Grant runs a very conservative set of books. Do we have large balances? Yep. And for a little tiny town like this that takes very little in taxes per homeowner, weathering storms like COVID and like other unexpected events, we do it with ease. Where other cities are going clamoring to the state and even federal government looking for bailout funds, we don't need to do that. So we maintain our independence in terms of our spending, in terms of our maintenance, and keeping the home in the country with those fund balances. Sharon? I'm going to be in trouble after this one, aren't I? Mm-hmm. You're all smiling at me. I'm in trouble.
I just want to make a motion to accept the audit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We can do that if Sharon would like us to do that. If you're done presenting, Sharon, we don't need that actual fund balance.
Those were all my highlights.
Okay.
See?
Well, fantastic. Sharon, that's fantastic. And I actually went through the audit. I'm kind of weird about that. And it looks good. I see the discrepancies you're seeing. But again, the fund balances are solid. We're getting things done. We're getting roads done. People are happy to live here. And gee, I don't know if there's any realtors here, but they might be able to tell us that houses sell in Grant in about 18 hours or so, because people want to be here. Okay. People want to be here badly. So we've got a motion on the floor from Mr. Giefer to accept the audit. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Roggs got it.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg.
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Mayor Huber.
Aye, and thank you very much, Sharon. Sorry to put you on the spot. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk to you later. Thanks so much. Any unfinished business that we want to discuss, staff? Okay, any staff updates tonight? Kim?
Mayor and council members, I will just remind everyone that the July, I didn't get it on the community calendar, the July meeting is June 29th to accommodate for the 4th of July holiday.
Thank you very much, Kim. Anything else? Jennifer? Dave looks like he's just listening in at this point. No? Okay. Very good. City council reports. I'm going to start this off real quick. I want to thank Kim Points and the rest of the city staff and Maroney's for hosting and holding cleanup day. I also want to thank and call out Mr. Jeff Giefer, who cooked some hot dogs in my plates. I really appreciate that. I heard not too many of them were burnt, although I got a lot of calls that they want to
yeah, I had a lot of comments that I did a superior job to the mayor. We don't need to talk about that.
Not what I heard. But anyway, hey, thanks for filling in. I appreciate that. It was a great turnout. I think that's a nice way for Mr. Schaefer was there. I heard he worked his fingers to the bone. Mr. Giefer was there cooking, and
a couple of our planning
meet our residents.
Planning commission members were there too.
Oh, that's right. Mr. Tufty, a couple others, I think, too. Dan. Kim.
I was just going to shout out to the PC members.
Yes.
Gagliardi and Tufty, and they worked really, really hard, as did Councilmember Schaefer and Councilmember Giefer's hot dogs were the best I've ever had out there.
I knew it.
Golden tongs.
Okay, that's fine. It's brats next year. I'll go brats. If I need to go big, I'll go brats.
Whoa.
Okay, there.
Yeah.
I'm all done with you guys. I'm going brats. All right. Mr. Schaefer, you have the community calendar, I'm pretty sure. Could you read that for us,
Mr. Huber?
Mr. Rock, what? Is it your turn?
One quick point that I wanted to bring up.
Sorry.
Everybody has received notices about the construction project that has closed down Manning, and people are going down Lake Elmo. And just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that there has been a couple of things that they're going to try to do to mitigate the intersection at 69th and Lake Elmo, including making sure that the traffic goes the proper speed. So if you do happen to go down Lake Elmo, please go the speed limit. There will be Washington County Sheriff deputies there enforcing the speed, which is really needed during this construction project. So I'm talking to a couple of the residents down 69th, and actually one of the Washington County Roads Commissioners talked to several of the residents. So that was a good thing. So just want to give everybody an update that, you know, the people are being heard on 69th Street. It is a rough intersection to begin with, but with the added traffic, and there is a lot of added traffic because I always go down Lake Elmo because I, you know, skip the lights on Manning. But there is a lot of traffic now. So just be aware that speed is being enforced and be cautious at that intersection.
Yeah, good reminders, John. You're absolutely right. There was a community outreach there. The folks there did a great job. Reached out to us and then reached out to their commissioner, Fran Meyer, and through him got a hold of the some of the engineering folks and commissioner folks over there. And Kim actually helped with that as well. So nice job all. And yeah, bad intersection. Slow down. Take it easy out there. You're not in that big a hurry. You ain't gonna hurt anybody. So Mr. Schaefer, community calendar, please.
I'll be happy to read it, but quick, I'd like to suggest that we think about having in-person meetings in the near future. I don't know what other people are thinking about that. I know you mentioned that your cable commission is having in person.
That's right. They're all back, and we're all back and looking at each other. So that's probably a good idea, Kim. Input.
We'll comment on that real quick. It's not just the city council; it's also the planning commission. And it would be my recommendation that until 7 people can be seated along with staff and hold large public hearings, and we can accommodate social distancing and mask, I would not recommend we move forward to in-person meetings quite yet.
Yeah. When I say cable commission meetings, I'm talking about subcommittees. So I'm on finance and personnel. So there's 4 of us, right? And we sit at a conference table that's about 10 feet long. So yeah, you can get that room really, really packed. We're gonna have to wait for sort of the AOK from whoever. I don't know. Maybe Fauci will figure it out at some point. Start giving us real advice. Who knows?
Well, anyway, event centers are still at just 50%.
Yeah, we'll stay on that, Jeff, because I think that's great. And when we get some real guidance from real professionals, we will certainly implement it. Go ahead and read our community calendar if you will.
All right, we'll do. Matamidi Public Schools Board meeting is Thursday, June 10th and 24th at the Matamidi District Education Center at 7 o'clock. Stillwater Public Schools Board meeting on Thursday, June 10th, Stillwater City Hall at 7 p.m. And the Washington County Commissioners meetings are on Tuesdays at the Government Center at 9 a.m.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Very nice. People have places to go. Who would like to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And John is a second.
Good.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogg?
Aye.
Councilmember Giefer?
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Aye.
Mayor Huber?
Hi. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Kim. Thanks, Dave.